Kia ora, talofa, namaste, haere mai, and welcome to this episode of The Niche Cast, coming at you on the 4th of December. Big up December, last month of the year. Currently got plenty of rain. So shout out to summer, shout out to Aotearoa. That's what we are here for, to big up Aotearoa, to big up Aotearoa sport. And we do have a interesting menu of Aotearoa sporting matters to discuss. The Blackcaps and the White Ferns had losses this weekend. Meanwhile, in the football realms, football Ferns and the Wellington Phoenix had good performances. The Wellington Phoenix had a win and the football Ferns had a draw against Colombia overseas. So we're going to go deep into discussing those matters. And of course, you can read about many of the things we're chatting about today on our website, thenews-case.com. Got a Blackcaps first test debrief against Bangladesh that is live on the website at the moment. Also got all the domestic cricket content you need. There'll be football Ferns debriefs. There'll be Wellington Phoenix content on our website. Got Flying Kiwis, which is happening as well. Did do a White Ferns versus Pakistan preview in which I specifically said they should be good enough to defeat Pakistan, but if they lose, we might have some issues. So far we've got some issues, but that is all on our website, thenews-case.com. If you do love Aotearoa sport and you want to get into the nitty gritty of what is happening, deep dives, lots of information, stats, facts, figures, nuggets, head on over to our website, thenews-case.com. And of course, we do love to send out our newsletter via Substack every Monday and Friday, which has all the links to the website and the latest content on our website, all the podcast information, any other links you might need, like the Buy Me a Coffee link to make a donation, like the link to join our Patreon whānau. You can also upgrade your free Substack subscription to a paid Substack subscription to access the subscriber podcast. Anything Niche Case that you need as part of that Monday and Friday newsletter, as well as a couple of paragraphs that we write just for those newsletters every Monday and Friday. Last Friday, I did highlight how Kalis Putoko from Tokoroa and Hamilton Boys High School First 15, he is now signed with the Gold Coast Titans. So these are the type of little wrinkles, little bits and bobs that you get in our newsletter, lots of Kiwi sporting information, because this Putoko kid is pretty lively. He's a lively young geezer from the Waikato, played kind of midfield, outside backs for Hamilton Boys High School First 15. And not only is he a good young Kiwi NRL talent now in a kind of fringe NRL system, but Kotoko is the second player from the 2023 New Zealand Schools team who is now signed with an NRL team. Because you got Putoko, who was I believe the only team list I could find for that New Zealand Schools team was for the first game, I believe, against Australia a few months ago, and he was starting in the midfield. Now he's signed to the Titans. Who's the other one? Tavita Nofahu from St. Kitts. He was a winger in that New Zealand Schools team. He's now got a training trial contract with the Dolphins. So if anyone was worried about the Kiwi NRL antics, the state of Aotearoa Rugby League that we have discussed in depth, well, now two lads from the New Zealand Schools Rugby Union team are now signed with NRL teams. There aren't many times where like one player from that New Zealand Schools team has joined an NRL team like within 6 months. It's now been a couple of months. But usually what happens is New Zealand Rugby Union, they kind of suss out which players are linked to rugby league clubs, to NRL systems, and they overlook them. They can select them in the New Zealand Māoris team, they can select them in the New Zealand Barbarians team, but very rarely do you get players from the New Zealand Schools Rugby Union team then going to NRL systems. We've had two this year. And the manner, the way in which they were playing for New Zealand Schools a few months ago, and now they're straight into NRL systems. That's also interesting. So that just tells you the story of the Kiwi NRL funk going around at the moment. Still waiting on New Zealand Warriors, SG Ball teams, Jersey Flag squads, their junior squads. Still waiting on a lot of the junior squads from Australia as well to see where the Kiwi NRL lads sit. But shout out to the Rabbitohs. The Rabbitohs did lay out all of their squads. And another little wrinkle that I touched on last Friday was Nazareth Tawa. He's a Glenora junior, also spent time at Marist. He was in the train and trial list for the Rabbitohs that I debriefed and broke down for the big old Kiwi NRL train and trial breakdown. He was there. He was part of it. But then the Rabbitohs announcement specifically mentioned him as an SG Ball player. So he's an under-19 SG Ball squad member for the Rabbitohs who has a train and trial deal with the Rabbitohs NRL squad. And he's the only player in that train and trial list for the Rabbitohs who was in the SG Ball squad. All the other lads, their Jersey Flag under-21s, their New South Wales Cup, their Queensland Cup. Then there's the young man Nazareth, who was an SG Ball player. Train and trial with the Rabbitohs. These things are happening beneath the radar in the Kiwi NRL pipelines, all of which highlight the fantastic abundance of Aotearoa Rugby League. So you can read about those in our newsletter. Any little development, any Kiwi NRL thing I learn, I chuck in those newsletters. So make sure you're tapping into those nuggets. Nico the Wildcard, you're also going to be talking about the New Zealand Breakers in today's newsletter dispatch, the Monday edition. Since we've talked about them, you did a deep dive into why they're stinking up the joint. We've chatted about them a few times in these podcasts. What's new?
Well, what's new is that since I wrote about them, they've played again. And the first game after the FIBA break, head on down to Christchurch, the Garden City, and deliver a fantastic performance against Adelaide. They were up, big time in the first half and just were able to manage the game from there. Did still happen to Breakers being Breakers, bring some negativity into the mix with Modi Mayor getting ejected at halftime. But in fairness, I take Modi's point about that being quite harsh to get two technicals at once, whereas perhaps one might have sufficed at the time. But great performance there. They were defended well. They scored extremely well. And at the end, we even saw one of those things that's been one of the more maligned aspects of them, which is that, they've started signing some Kiwi development and sort of injury replacement type players, but they don't play them. Well, here we actually got Max Darling getting about a minute at the end. We got Dom Kalmapoto getting about a minute at the end. Alex McNaught getting a minute at the end. McNaught had played a little bit beforehand. The other two, that was season debut for them. And we got some decent minutes in there for Dan Fotu, who played several minutes in there in that game. So things look beautiful at that point. But the thing about the Breakers is it's not that they can't do it. It's that they can't do it consistently. So naturally, they played a game a couple days later. I think I can't even remember. Was it Tasmania or Southeast Melbourne? And they lost again. So it's winning one, losing one. That pattern is not going to solve things. It was I've got the wrong game here. It was 90-79 against Southeast Melbourne, and it's like, just that's the pattern. That's the pattern. That's how it's been for the Breakers this year. Is they it's not that they're incapable of turning on these fantastic performances which show you what they can do when everything clicks. It's just that they don't seem to be able to do it 2 games in a row. And when you start off in a big hole, losing too many games, the pattern of win one, lose one, win one, lose one that they've been going on since, that's not going to get you into the playoffs. So that's where we're at with the Breakers, and I'll dig a little bit deeper into that in the email, just to highlight the ways in which that at first showed up what I'd written in the article, and then ultimately confirmed what I'd written in the article a few days later when they played the second game of the weekend.
As you said, you can read about that in our Monday newsletter via Substack, denishecase.substack.com. And we also do our subscriber podcast for those generous folk who support the Niche Case through Patreon and with a paid Substack subscription. Shout out to anyone who has donated through Buy Me a Coffee as well. We appreciate your support. What I think we might do for the subscriber podcast this week is if you got any Blackcaps questions, those members of the Patreon whānau, those people with a paid Substack subscription, hit us up with your Blackcaps thoughts, your Blackcaps queries, any Kiwi cricket ponderings, whatever you want us to chat about for the subscriber podcast, and we'll go deep into Blackcaps cricket with your comments, questions, queries. If you're a member of the Patreon whānau, drop it into the last Patreon post. If you're supporting us through Substack, comment on that latest dispatch as well, and we'll use your questions, queries, comments to drive our Blackcaps discussion in the subscriber podcast, which will probably happen on Wednesday because the Blackcaps start the second test against Bangladesh on Wednesday. Otherwise, we'll just see how we go. But we always do that extra podcast every week for the generous folk who support us and basically fund the niche case. So we're out here doing our best to document Aotearoa sporting excellence and see how we go. Just a couple of Kiwi battlers grinding through the mangroves. Let's go with mangroves today because it's usually mangroves every day. We're always battling through the mangroves, deep into the estuary, deep into the mangroves. That's what we do. Definitely got a few blown out jandals at the moment, but we're battling on. We keep going barefoot because that's what we need, and we need some mindfulness. What do you got, Chief?
Righto. Let's see if I can do this one, because this mindfulness isn't a quote so much as an idea from. I've been listening to a podcast about Plato's Timaeus. So one of Plato's sort of what do they call them? Like dialogues, I think they're called. It's like a book that's based on conversations. And it was him that I think the day after he did his Republic, I think is his most famous one. And the next day, him and a bunch of the bros just hung around talking about some other stuff. And this is like the after hours podcast version of that. And they in this, Plato runs through this idea of like the creation of the universe. And it's surprisingly, for its time, like surprisingly close to what the sort of Judeo-Christian thing would come around to be, particularly actually some of the Gnostic ideas with like demiurges and whatever. But his idea diverting from some of the initial Greek things. And he wasn't saying that this is the answer, follow me, this is a new religion. He was saying like, here's an idea, hypothetically, that might have worked, you know? And in that, he talks about how it's not so much God as they kept saying demiurge in the thing. So that's, again, like a Gnostic word that they use. But let's just say, so a being takes the chaos that existed beforehand and molds it into the universe. And in turning the chaos into order, they create something along the lines of a universe that's shaped in like a perfect sphere. I'm not sure if that was meant to be hypothetical or like metaphorical, or if actually the universe is in a sphere. But the idea is that it's like a perfect shape, and everything was used. Every bit of matter that was involved in the chaos was put into order to create a universe that, because it's a perfect sphere, which is something you don't like find in nature. You find imitations of perfect spheres, but you'll never find the exact perfect thing, because you can always go close enough to find a scratch or whatever. The exact idea of perfection is only this was also something that they said, but I won't get into this, about how it's like a representation of perfection is automatically not going to be perfect. But the point of the thing is that being a perfect sphere, everything being put into the exact working order, means that nothing is wasted. Everything recycles itself like a sort of perpetual motion kind of machine. The universe sustains itself, if that makes sense. And then the idea is, from an as above, so below thing, that humanity represents that, but in that imperfect way. So apparently this is why we have like the example in the thing is, this is why we have like mouths and have to eat food that isn't part of ourselves. We have to take something else to sustain ourselves, because we are imperfect representations. However, I'm struggling to keep on track here, but I think I've almost brought it around. Because the imperfect representations at a human level is because the humanity is like one aspect of the jigsaw. In order to be part of the whole, you have to zoom all the way out to find the perfect sphere thing, right? So the idea is that humans alone are incomplete. Humans as part of the natural order are complete, but are not complete in and of themselves. The natural order is the completion, and humans are part of that. I think that's how they brought it around. Is the idea of if you're in alignment with the world around you, you're participating in perfection. If you are not in alignment with the world around you, you're actually still participating in perfection because it's happening anyway, but you're not aware of it, and therefore you're not in a mental alignment. Your soul is missing a little bit of a piece. You can't be complete in and of yourself. You have to be. You have to join in with the natural order. Does that ringing a bell? If I sum that up,
the point of these mindfulness is to like just share some sort of practical gem that you can take with you on your day. And I got to be honest, I don't know how we can break that down into a practical, simple thing for the listener.
That's
but
what I was trying to do at the end.
No,
is the like
we don't need to stretch it out. Don't stretch it out.
Alignment, you know?
Yeah, whatever. People can do with it what they want, because I don't really know. Like, yeah, it was good. Let's just say that it was good.
I took a gamble with that one. We'll see.
You did. No,
so maybe someone will get something out of it or not.
It's perfect because you are always, you, specifically you're always in alignment with your mindfulness. So when you share your mindfulness, it's because there's something happening that is working with your mindfulness, or you bring up a mindfulness that really hits home. And I'm not sure if the listener feels this as well, but I'd suggest that maybe we just sit with that, and we might, I don't know what we'll do with it, but I appreciate your mindfulness. You might
just read old mate Plato, and he can probably explain it better than I can.
Well, that's what you're here for. You're here to regurgitate.
I got to read it as well.
Yeah, and break it down for us plebs, because that was good. I don't know, because I didn't really understand your mindfulness, but maybe there's some sort of thing here where everything is kind of perfect. Everything is in alignment when you see how the Kiwi Sports weekend played out. Because the things that the Blackcaps and White Ferns lacked were things that the Wellington Phoenix and the football Ferns had. And we'll go through each kind of, team and performance one by one. But I do want to highlight that thread as we enter this discussion, because Wellington Phoenix, 1-0 win away from home, some hearty, resolute defense, as the Phoenix have shown a lot this season. We've talked a lot about their attacking impetus and whatnot, but prior to the game, you shared like a Opta stats thing about Alex Rufer, the amount of tackles he makes. Alex Paulson, fantastic goalie, perhaps the best goalie in the A-League. Defense blocking shots. The freakazoid of Lucas Kelly-Hield at left back. Like, the Wellington Phoenix are a really solid defensive team. Didn't concede a goal away from home. Gritty, hearty defensive performance. Football Ferns didn't win, but Colombia is a better footballing nation than Aotearoa in Colombia. And the words to describe that Football Ferns performance were gritty, hearty, full of mana. So that's cool. That's good stuff for New Zealand football, and we'll get into those performances. But you look at the Blackcaps and White Ferns, and they lacked those elements. The White Ferns have lacked those elements for a while, and we've talked about this for the last 5 years. The White Ferns kind of suck, but they're good against weaker teams. That's why losing that first T20 against Pakistan was a bit troublesome, because Pakistan looked like the bully. Pakistan looked like the dominant team. Pakistan were confident. Pakistan had grit and mana and skill and flair. The White Ferns didn't, and then we go to the Blackcaps in Bangladesh, and part of my debrief was I highlighted how it's really hard for the Blackcaps to showcase their grit, determination, and grisly fight for a draw on the final day. Because chasing 300 odd runs on the final day of a test in Bangladesh or any other Asian country, when they've got accurate, skillful spinners and the ball's turning both ways and it's got variable bounce. Like, it's really hard, regardless of your grit and determination. It's pretty hard to fight off that challenge. The 4 days prior, they also didn't show any grit and determination, and that was missing. So we've got a Blackcaps test loss. Do you have any summary thoughts of the test loss before we get into some nitty gritty elements?
Well, there was a point like as after like they had a 7-run lead after the first innings, and it felt okay. Like we didn't they battled nicely with their lower order guys, Southey and Jamison, scoring some runs to ensure that they didn't have a deficit. They didn't really have a lead either. Like 7 runs is gone and 2 overs. This kind of thing. It's basically dead even after the first like after each team had batted once. Then Bangladesh started to get away a bit in the third innings and were putting up a lead, because I was thinking going into that, like, anything over 250 is probably going to be Bangladesh's game. I'm not sure. Like, I wasn't too confident. There was cracks in the wickets out on the second day. Wasn't too confident of how the Blackcaps would be able to muster up a fourth innings chase on that in those conditions. And then watching Bangladesh just kind of like cruise through not just their top order, but through the middle order, and Olmate Shanto got 100, but they got contributions elsewhere as well, and just steadily pushing that thing up towards closer to I can't remember what they got to in the end. The chase was like 330, 340 range, wasn't it? Somewhere around there. And you're thinking, well, as that had unfolded, watching Bangladesh go, I'm thinking, well, we can do this. We've got batters that are as good, if not better than this, and what these guys are doing. If they can do it, then we can do it. Maybe 350 is not impossible to chase on the final wicket in the final innings. And then what happened is that we went to bat in the last session of day 4, and just instantly, from what we'd seen from the Kiwi spinners versus what we saw from the Bangladesh spinners, like, unless they took like an axe to the wicket in the 10 minutes in between the innings change, unless the heavy roller just had like spikes on it or something, their spinners were turning the ball a lot more than ours were. They were turning it in multiple directions. They were just way more accurate. And the result was that actually, no, the Blackcaps didn't have a chance of chasing that. They just weren't going to be good enough in those conditions. And it was a confronting thing, because as I was watching us bowl to them, thinking, oh, we're doing okay here, and they're still scoring runs, thinking, well, then in that case, I guess this is chaseable. And then all of a sudden, it's not chaseable, because actually their dudes are much better at doing this than our dudes were. And when you're watching Bangladesh just apply pressure on top of pressure on top of pressure, you realize a little more obviously the ways in which, like, Ajaz Patel was bowling a bundle of overs, but he was also going at like 3.5 and over or something like that. Like, he wasn't piling up maidens. Sodhi as a leg spinner is going to bowl the odd loose ball, and that's going to get pushed away. And Phillips, I thought if anything, they maybe even under-bowled Glenn Phillips, which is a weird thing to say. Definitely think they over-bowled Ajaz to an extent, but that was the plan going in, clearly, is he was supposed to be the stock bowler, and he wasn't able to keep the run rate down. Therefore, the other guys weren't going to be able to keep the run rate down. The seamers can only bowl for a short spells at a time because of just the heat and the physical demands of it. And yeah, the way it unfolded was that the hope I thought I had going into the fourth innings was completely irrational, because actually Bangladesh's bowlers were just far better for those conditions. And you'd have to say their batters in that third innings were better for the conditions as well. And that's how you win games at home, is by understanding your own conditions better than others. And to be fair, this is the first time we've ever lost to Bangladesh in Bangladesh. Been a few draws in there. Like, it's not like they've had an easy time of it against them away. And since we last went to Bangladesh, we have lost a test match at home against Bangladesh. So they know they can beat they know they can beat the Blackcaps in New Zealand. They know they can beat them in Bangladesh as well. So that was kind of the journey, and the sort of the journey into an unfortunate enlightenment there, of just realizing that actually throughout this test match, maybe Bangladesh were just better. And that's, frustrating, but there are ways in which the Blackcaps can fix that going into the second test.
I think I actually said this on Thursday because I thought Tim Southey and Kyle Jamieson were moving the new ball pretty well and conditions were suiting them, but they just didn't land enough deliveries on off stump. And when Shariful Islam was in his best kind of work, his best zone, he was just honing in on that off stump. And this, along with one thing I'll mention in a jiffy, but the Blackcaps just looked a bit off for Test cricket. And maybe that was coming off the World Cup. Maybe it was just a bit of fatigue or just not quite in the Test match zone because the seamers couldn't make the most of the new ball by honing in on that off stump. And the spinners, the difference that I noticed, and it was said in the commentary, shout out to the commentary. I actually like that commentary team. You got the local lads.
Agree. Yeah.
Respectfully, I'm not too sure of their names. I do know Grant Elliott. He was pretty good. And Mr. Ackerman. Shout out to Ackerman. He's got a good gig. Like, he seems like a South African geezer who's got a Bangladesh commentary job. So shout out to him. He knew his cricket though, and I like the whole broadcast. The Bangladesh spinners, they bowled straight. So the seamers in Test cricket, you want to just like hone in on off stump, maybe fourth stump, and maybe out to fifth stump. The spinners, you want to be landing on off and middle, because then if a delivery spins, well, if it's like Taijul, if he's landing one of his deliveries and it spins away from the right-hander, you can catch the outside edge. If the delivery goes straight on, you can get an LBW, you can get a bowled. And that's the Test match spinner zone. And especially in spin-friendly conditions, you need to hit that zone consistently, because even then, like, that's how you get your wickets with the bad balls. But if you're not landing deliveries on the stumps reasonably full, not full, but, you know, they have to kind of come forward and prod at it. Like Kane Williamson, he's the best batter New Zealand's ever had. He's the best batter in the frickin' world, and he missed a straight delivery. Like, that's what happens when you're attacking the stumps. Bangladesh did it, New Zealand didn't. And the New Zealand seamers didn't do it, the New Zealand spinners didn't do it. And to your point about Ajaz Patel, I wrote this in my debrief. Well, actually, I wrote how Ajaz Patel, his averages have never really been that great because he bowls so many overs. But the difference now is that his averages are getting higher because he's taking less wickets and he's also conceding more runs. And if you look at his last 4 years of Test cricket, 2019, 2.8 RPO. 2021, 3 runs and over. 2022, 3.5 RPO. 2023, 4 RPO. So there was, like, because Ajaz Patel, he was the only lad to bowl over 33 overs, I think. He was also the first lad to be given the ball after the seamers. It was clear that that's his role. His role is to bowl tight. That's why he's always selected as a Test spinner for New Zealand outside of New Zealand, because he dots it up, because he keeps it tight, because he's got subtle variations, flight and spin and dip and accuracy. He's not really doing that at the moment. And conceding 4 RPO in this year, which does include some tests in Pakistan. I actually think I wrote that he was the most expensive bowler in the Pakistan tour. So he's not really doing that role, and that not only puts pressure on him bowling so many overs, but it also puts pressure on all the other spinners, because Sodhi's good when he's bowling alongside an accurate, tidy spinner. But if Sodhi's bowling,
like he does with Santner in the shorter form stuff,
exactly, and if Sodhi or any other, like if Phillips he can't be counted on to bowl 6 deliveries on off stump. Like, he's a bit of a wild card. So you've got a situation where Sodhi's a bit of a wild card, Phillips is a bit of a wild card, and the trustworthy economical spinner isn't quite doing his job. And that's where I think the Blackcaps fell short.
Yeah, that's basically it, isn't it? Like, at least from the way that I don't know, digested that Test match. There's critique to be seen throughout the way that all of those bowlers and a lot of the batters performed throughout that thing. There always is in any Test match. But while I don't want to say it was like, I don't want to imply that this was all AJ Patel's fault, but what I'm saying is that he was an essential part from which everyone else was supposed to spring off. You need that one guy to just tie up an end, and then the other guys have a bit more freedom to get away with their loose stuff, but also to attack more. Like that's how it's supposed to be. And he did bowl. I think he bowled what was it, 24? Well, he bowled the most in each of the innings. First innings was 24 overs. Second one was like 36 or 26 and 34 or something like that. So he bowled over 60 overs definitely across the two innings, and yeah, it just seemed to, frustratingly as it went on, seemed to get a little bit less effective. Although he did get a few late wickets to sort of so a 4 for in the second one, but it was the workload they took to it, and it wasn't. I guess the best way to sum this up is it wasn't what you normally get from the Blackcaps bowling in partnerships. And you did already allude to this a bit with how Sodhi is better when he has that. Like you normally, like even the seam bowling stuff at the start, because you'd see, and it was conditions as much as anything. You see Southee bowling over or two, Jamison bowling over or two, then Ajaz is on after like the 5th over or something. And then one of the seamers takes a break, comes back 10 overs later, and then short little spells, but they're not really bowling together, dotting things up in combination. And then, yeah, they just were never able to get that out of their spinners the way Bangladesh were. And that's how a relatively close game overall can just slip away from you because you aren't able to take the big moments throughout. You're not able to take enough of those I don't know. Yeah, you're not able to break partnerships when you need to. You're not able, and there were a couple of moments in there where you feel like Blackcaps fielding wasn't quite as good as it ordinarily would be. It's reminded of that Henry Nichols catch, where he scraped the ball along the ground, which I thought was could have been given out. I thought probably fair the way it was, although there's one Bangladesh had that wasn't much different later on, but. Just little inefficiencies where, like, if he'd got there a step sooner, there's no need to go upstairs at all. He would have just taken a comfortable catch. And Mitchell dropped one at slips, at least one. He might have dropped a couple, but there was one in particular I remember where he juggled it and then fell and then couldn't adjust his body to catch it as it dropped gently in front of him. But yeah, on the whole, I think it's just another way of saying that they didn't play as efficient cricket as they normally do, and that's how you lose a game like this.
I still feel the need to highlight how they kept Bangladesh below 340 runs in both innings. That's a pretty decent effort. However, if the hosts can't get over 340 runs, then it's going to be pretty tricky for the tourists to get over 340 runs. But overall, I think they did well to... It's not like Bangladesh got away from them at any stage, and they maintained... they got themselves into a pretty solid position with chasing 332 for victory. The other thing to highlight here is the Henry Nichols role. I did highlight a bit of Devon Conway has had a dip in form. I think I had 3 test centuries in his first 5 tests. He's had 1 century in his last 12 or 13 tests, which is a bit of an issue, but he's had some good scores, but this is his worst year of test batting for sure. And then you've got Henry Nichols, who... He just looks kind of distracted. You mentioned some of the fielding, and with I think it was the second innings, he had a tumultuous 8-ball stint, which he got out with a super aggressive sweep shot. And yeah, sure, Daryl Mitchell's coming out, he's trying to play reverse sweeps, and they're trying to do this Australia thing, which I saw from when they played against India earlier this year, where you just you get frustrated and you're just trying to hit out. It's well, there might be a better way to deal with this bowling than just trying to smash boundaries. But Henry Nichols played a very aggressive sweep shot and got out, and I just don't know if he's the right lad for the job right now. And there's a better option. Rachin Ravindra's right there. You add in Rachin Ravindra, you got another spin bowler. You can put him anywhere in the batting lineup. Ideally, I think you just go Daryl Mitchell to 4. You can go Ravindra to 5, and then you've got Blundell, Phillips, and so on. I don't actually see the need for any other changes, although, I think Santner's a really good bowler. I think Santner's really skillful, and he might be a better bowler, just a straight up better bowler, better cricketer than Ajaz Patel. Like, I don't know, but Santner's got tricks. Santner's got deliveries that go both ways, you know, a little bit of funk, although then, oh no, maybe Santner can be economical. I don't know, but I think Santner's quite good at cricket.
He normally can only be economical in these situations.
Yeah, but he's
but
showing that he
might
has
be what you want, you know?
Yeah, and boy, he's got also variations, and I think he's just a more skillful, trickier bowler than Patel at this stage. However, I think the Nicholls situation has come to a not a climax, like the opposite of a climax, a down patch, where they selected him for the first test. Fair enough, he deserves it. He's been in the mix for a while, but also he's not doing a whole lot. The type of dismissals were a bit concerning. I don't think they'll go Will Young because he's the top order batter that you could bring in. But Ravindra at least offers a bit of spin bowling, and he's also going to be better at batting in these conditions because what is Rachin Ravindra being designed for? It's playing cricket in these conditions. So I think that's just an interesting little team makeup thing that you could see. Any thoughts on? Because I've got Henry Nicholls as the most precariously poised Blackcap after that first test.
Yeah, so do I. Because I mean, like you said, they did keep Bangladesh under 350 in both innings. It's not like Bangladesh had to put 500 on this bowling lineup. Like this bowling lineup, which we've just gone through, the ways in which they did not perform as well as they might have been expected to, still were not that bad. Like they weren't great, but they weren't that bad. You know, you don't necessarily need to change anything. I could see a way in which you bring Santner in. My worry is that they'd bring him in for Phillips or Sodhi. And I think if you bring in Santner, it has to be for Patel because you have to be saying he's the workhorse, the one who's not necessarily going to take wickets. If he does, it's going to be because of just the sheer volume that he bowls. But he's the guy who's not going to get hit, and it allows them to attack a bit more from the other end. And it does strengthen their batting lineup as well. It's another factor to consider. As Santner has a test century, he would be batting ahead of any of those other bowlers if he were in there. But yeah, I don't think that needs to be an issue. And Patel did still take 5 or 6 wickets in that game. If that's his bad day, then that's not so bad, assuming you hope he can perform better and more accurately in the next one. Nicholls is an issue though, and there's a stat that you pointed out. I can't remember if it was in the email or if it was a tweet or it might have been both, about how I can't remember what it was. It's like 1 score over 40, I think, in the last. Do you remember what this is?
Not specifically, but it's been a long time because he hit the double century in the last test against Sri Lanka. So his last test prior to this test was the double 100 and his century for 7 consecutive years. But prior to that, because I think he got a century against South Africa summer of 2022-23. So that was his century for that year.
Yeah.
So between the century against South Africa and the double century against Sri Lanka, he hasn't had a score over 40. So it's classic Henry Nicholls getting a knock when he needs it to keep his place in the team, which I think is, it's like a lot of sports teams, they're stuck in no man's land, and that's the Henry Nicholls zone where it's like you don't do anything, but then you do something when you need to, so you stay in the team so you can not do anything again.
Yeah. So I've looked it up, going back to the start of 2022. He did get a 75 against Bangladesh, and he went 0-0 in the rest of that Bangladesh series. 105 against South Africa. And then from then it goes 39, 7, 33, 19, 7, 22, 26, 5, 4, 7, 30, 29, 2, 20, 200 not out, 19 and 2. And it's not just the lack of runs there. You can't, like, it's also your point about the way he got out. And in both innings, is the first one he was shuffling down the wicket and dangling the bat outside. First ball of a new spell from their seam bowler. Yeah. Big change up, and the obvious plan. They're coming in. Let's put the left arm seamer Shariful. He's going to come in and have a go, and he just like shuffles away to dangles a bat at one outside off stump and edges behind. Like just a dumb way to get out. At least see through the first ball. This is an obvious change in dynamic from Bangladesh, as from a captaincy point of view. At least at least get an eye of look. You've been facing the spinners, and here comes the seamer, and you just and then the other the way he got out in the with that little like sweep shot top edge, caught it short fine leg or whatever it was just so dumb. I'm watching that being like, what are you thinking, bro? Like, what was the idea? Because it is lashing out and that you're trying to play a shot, but it's not lashing out and that you're trying to, like, it was a little dabble sweepy thing. Like it wasn't like he's trying to smack the cover off of it. It's just he's sort of stuck in between. Same as both of these innings, just sort of stuck in between two ways of thinking, and that's not a place you really want to be making your decisions from in Test cricket. And yeah, if there's no one else there, then fine, you stick with your bro. But if there is a guy who I think the clamoring for Ravinder has been overrated because it is a different format. It's not the same. His World Cup form helps. Like he's obviously a dude who's brimming with confidence right now, but it doesn't mean he's going to automatically be successful in this Test team coming switching formats. But everything else also aligns towards him. He plays spin very well. He gives you another bowling option, which I do think they could have really used at times in this Test match. And he also means like that. I think it obviously doesn't matter compared to Henry Nicholls, but it matters compared to someone like, say, Will Young, who isn't a bowling option, where Ravinder would also keep a left-handed option in the middle order, where you could bat him at 4 where Nicholls has been, but I think, yeah, you probably want him at 5, slide Mitchell up, and then you've still got because Blundell and Phillips, obviously right-handers, Mitchell and Williamson, you got 2 lefties opening, but you want to be able to mix it up and keep that combination, particularly when you're facing a lot of spin, just to make sure they're messing with their accuracy, asking them to bowl over and around and different lines and whatever. So I can certainly see if there's going to be one change for the second test, I think that's probably the one that ought to have been made, or ought to be made. I don't think they need to do anything with the bowling lineups, but I agree that is an option that you might consider Santner for Patel. But I think the Nicholls stuff might have come to a head of that run of just scores under 40 with the 200 not out. How much weight can that 200 not out carry? Because it's not the other thing with Nicholls. The other factor, which has been the case throughout his career, is he just doesn't score runs away. His home versus away record is drastically in favor of the home stuff, and this is not a home test.
The only thing that stopped me from going all into because he averages maybe over 40 in New Zealand, away is 20. But then he's got a good average at neutral. And I haven't got into the weeds to break it down. That could be in the UAE, that could be in the World Test Championship. So he's good at neutral, so you can't say he's shit away because he's good at neutral. But I will add, I think Daryl Mitchell's the second best batter right now. I think he's gone ahead of Devon Conway. But the main man, Kane Williamson, is the best batter in the world. I tweeted this out. He's got an average of 67.1, which is the highest average this year in Test cricket for batters who have scored over 500 runs. So he's averaging 67. Joe Root's averaging 65.5. Dimuth Karunaratne, he is averaging 60.8. So Kane Williamson's the best batter in the world for sure.
Only batter with 4 Test centuries this year as well. One of the guys with 3 actually is Mr. Shanto, who picked up his 3rd one in this test.
Mr. Shanto was quite impressive for Bangladesh throughout that test captain debut, so big up to him. And big up to Bangladesh. Don't mind a bit of Bangladesh cricket. The one thing I did notice, and I've thought about this deeply, maybe I wouldn't say I thought about it more than your mindfulness, but I definitely did boil it down a bit better than you did with the when a sloppy wicketkeeper is a bad sign for a cricket team. And I don't think it's, of course, a wicketkeeper who's not very good, they're going to be sloppy, it's going to look bad. That's what it is. That's obvious. But I don't think Tom Blundell's a bad wicketkeeper, but I do think he was sloppy in this test. And it just is to me, that is an indication of this team is off. And there's other indications, like Daryl Mitchell dropping the ball. Daryl Mitchell doesn't really drop the ball too much. But I did notice, Tom Blundell, usually the ball just goes straight into his gloves. Now, it doesn't really matter where it is. He's not quite Quinton de Kock, who barely moves his gloves and the ball just goes straight in there. But Blundell's a good wicketkeeper, probably the best wicketkeeper in Aotearoa. The ball usually sticks to his gloves. I thought he was a bit sloppy in this test match, and to me, that is an indication that the team is off. I don't know why. Maybe I'm just doing the same thing with your mindfulness because I haven't boiled it down to a why. I will say maybe it's this is, if you got a sloppy wicketkeeper, then it's a reflection of your standards. Where a sloppy wicketkeeper is acceptable because you're allowing it to be acceptable. For the Blackcaps, I think it's just an indication that they were slightly off, whereas the White Ferns, they always have a sloppy wicketkeeper. Basically, since Katie Martin retired, they've tinkered with Izzy Gaze. She's, with all due respect, Izzy Gaze struggles to catch the ball cleanly. But she's not playing. And the White Ferns lost to Pakistan with Bernadine Bezodenhout at wicketkeeper, and it was the same thing. It was just really sloppy, and that was part of a sloppy fielding performance for the White Ferns. Same with the Blackcaps, where the Blackcaps, there is a clear difference between the Blackcaps and White Ferns. The White Ferns, this has become the status quo. This has become the norm, whereas the Blackcaps, these are indicators to let me know that they are not at their best. And I would expect a far better fielding, 1%ers, wicket keeping, gritty, grindy, mahi, whatever it is, accuracy, discipline. I'd expect a far better performance from the Blackcaps in the second test. I don't expect that from the White Ferns right now because they're just a sloppy cricket team. And I noticed that, I realized this as I was watching Bezodenhout and the White Ferns fielding against Pakistan, where there's just a lot of drop balls from Bezodenhout, a lot of Fran Jonas isn't a good fielder, crucial stage of the game. I can't remember who was bowling. It might have been Eden Carson. She's bowling a tight over, and Sophie Devine literally jumps over the ball that goes for 4. Last ball of the over. These things are happening for the White Ferns in home conditions, Susie Bates Stadium against Pakistan. No wonder you're losing. It's just I don't know what new to say about the White Ferns, right? These are things that have been highlighted by us and consistently talked about for the last 5 years. As I said earlier, what's different now is that Bob Carter was the coach before, then he got brushed aside or he stood down. Coach Ben Sawyer comes in. He's the savior. He's far better than Bob Carter, but Ben Sawyer and the White Ferns still struggle. They still kind of suck. And Bob Carter's on the coaching team. Bob Carter got replaced by Ben Sawyer, and now he's an assistant coach for this T20 series. It makes no sense. It's why are you doing this? You're just hurting yourself. You're just it's so strange. But yeah, the White Ferns lost to Pakistan. I will also say Amelia Kerr wasn't playing. She's the best cricketer from Aotearoa on the women's side right now. She's the best batter. She's a good bowler, and she is a great fielder. She's the best fielder in the team, closely followed by Georgia Plummer and Eden Carson. I think Eden Carson is one of the best cricketers in New Zealand. I've got her top 5. Amelia Kerr, Sophie Devine, Susie Bates, Maddie Green. Leah Tahuhu's there, so maybe top 6, maybe top 7. But Carson is fantastic at cricket. Won't be in the ODI series because she's not good enough to play ODIs, even though she's the best bowler in HBJ Shield. What's doing? But this loss came without Amelia Kerr. So that is important to note. She was unavailable due to the Women's Big Bash League. Shout out to Amy Satterthwaite, back-to-back champion as assistant coach with the Strikers. She's not good enough for the White Ferns, but she is good enough to be an assistant coach for the Strikers. probably should be the White Ferns coach. Like, let's just be honest. Let's kick the Blokes out. The Blokes are doing a shit job of coaching the White Ferns. Let's get Amy Satterthwaite in there. Crikey, Jack. White Ferns didn't score enough runs. 127 for 6 off 20 overs is not enough runs. And then sloppy fielding, some reasonably average bowling, and just general White Ferns ick. They couldn't defend that total. Be interesting to see if they improve. I expect them to improve. Well, I said before I don't, but I still think like these are home conditions against the touring Pakistan team who are far better than they have been before. And Pakistan, like, they're not Bangladesh anymore. They're not Sri Lanka. Like, they're a serious cricket team at this juncture. And it'll be very interesting to see how this series plays out, because I do think the White Ferns can win the second and third T20s, but if they still got this icky vibe where the standards are low and the execution of skills is not happening, and one player's scoring over 30 runs in your home conditions, it's like Leah Tahu, who went for 12 runs and over. She's the best T20 bowler for the White Ferns this year, and she wasn't a factor. I don't know what's doing. It's just a weird vibe, but it all crystallized for me watching another, like, the White Ferns just, at the moment, they just have sloppy wicket keepers. And to me, that is a reflection of everything you're doing as a cricket team.
Yeah. Yeah, I did watch that. I did watch that White Ferns game, so I saw many of the same things you're describing there. I'm thinking, yeah, I don't know. For the record, though, just point out there was a lot of what do you call it, like a summary point at the end of the mindfulness. I did get around to that. I think I just lost you beforehand, so that's on me in the build up. I'll cop that one. I tried something different with it, and we didn't quite get there. That's all right. Yeah.
Keep it moving.
The White Ferns wicket-keeping thing feels like the issue is that they're trying to pick the best batter who can keep, rather than trying to, because like Bazudin, who's opening the batting for them, and I can't speak so much about Gaze, but she wasn't an opener certainly for the Ferns. I don't know what she does at the domestic scene. That's your point of expertise rather than mine, but it just seems like they're, in order to find solutions for some aspects, they're they're choosing to sacrifice other elements, which maybe just, again, it's not efficient cricket. And like, you get too bogged up in trying to solve one problem, and then you create other problems as a result. And that's kind of the place where they're at. And it's a place I've seen a lot from the football Ferns, to be fair, as well, in recent times being like the last 10, 15 years that I've watched them.
Take us into the football Ferns in their game against Colombia and compare it to any White Ferns stuff that pops up, but let's flow into a football Ferns.
Alrighty, let's do that. Because I think one of their big issues in terms of the, like, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater kind of thing, which is a state where the White Ferns seem to be at the moment. You solve one thing, but then you make other things worse by finding a solution for one thing. One of the issues with the Ferns has been whether they've been able to, the football Ferns, and whether they've been able to maintain their sort of this thing that they were known for by other teams, which is their sort of it's that grit and grindy stuff you're talking about. It's the defensive solidity. It's being physical. It's being aggressive. It's being difficult to play against, even if you're 5-0 down. Which like, I've literally heard USA players, I remember, saying this kind of stuff when they were out here smacking an understrength like second 11 Ferns team with their best players at the start of the year, which maybe didn't work out so well for them for their World Cup preparation for America there, but that's their problem. I did notice there's apparently a Netflix Insider documentary, which is all the rage these days, is the Insider documentaries, and I can't stand hardly any of them because they're all so like sanitized. But this one might be funny because it's America losing at the thing they thought they were going to win. Like, they thought they were going to win the World Cup, and then they didn't. The football Ferns, have struggled to maintain that defensive solidity while also trying to be a team that necessarily so wants to keep more possession and be a bit more creative and just evolve in line with modern football to keep up with the growth that other teams are showing. It's never gone entirely. There's always been games where they're at their best when this stuff is true. Against Norway, did they beat Norway at the World Cup because they were this free-flowing attack and creative force? They were not. They had one great move and scored one lovely goal, and other than that, it was about gritty defense. It was about just like winning the ball, disrupting everything Norway were doing. That's the best performance that we've seen from them in several years, and that's what the foundation was. And against Switzerland, similar things. Even against Philippines, for the most part, there's one mistake prior to halftime, and then just exposed their lack of attacking efficiency. There's that word again, where they weren't able to find an equalizer, which would have sent them through to the knockouts if they'd done so. So this stuff has been there for them.
Let's not relive this whole World Cup campaign. Like, we're a new cycle. Like, let's look to the future.
It is a new cycle. Well, we are building towards 2027 now, which is quite a clear thing with the focus of the squad. But it's trying to bring through new players who can still show that element, and I think we got a fair bit of that against Colombia. That was the thing, is the same issues with scoring goals were on display, even with different players playing. But they did create some chances. I thought there was elements where you could compare it to the All Whites, where that All Whites game against Ireland, they were pretty average up until a point where they had their first decent counter-attacking move, and it was like that just clicked for them. It was like at that point they realized, oh, we're actually good enough to play against a team like this. And it was just the difference wasn't technical, it was just confidence. It just looked like a team that figured out that they belonged at that kind of level and proceeded to play like they belonged at that level. The Ferns struggled to do that against Colombia, and in the first half they're definitely the second best team. Colombia missed at least one sitter of a goal and hit the crossbar, and then some other just good blocks as much as good saves. Anelito was very good in goal, getting an opportunity as the starter there, keeping a clean sheet too. But I think it stemmed off of the sort of the courage of Katie Bowen and Rebecca Stott as centre backs, but then also you got Michaela Foster and especially Mackenzie Barry. I think Mackenzie Barry struggled with the pace of the game at times and some of the technical stuff, but also she's such a good tackler. It sets a tone as well. Then again, so CJ Bott. It's just something about playing in that right back position for the football Ferns, apparently. And Malia Steinmetz led the way, absolutely led the way for them, where a lot of their, at least at first, and later on they started to do a few things from set pieces and even some counterattacks, but at first their best attacks came from defense, stemming specifically from Steinmetz pressing forward, winning the ball, pushing onwards, usually with Jackie Hand in tow, and trying to counterattack from there. There's like transitional stuff. It's defense leading into attack. It's the same thing. It's like no matter where they go, they need to maintain that baseline of just being a strong, capable defensive team. And that can lead into becoming a better attacking team. So we saw bits of that against Colombia. It's still obviously very much a work in progress, unable to put away chances when they did finish stronger. Like the second half, they probably had the better of the chances. In the last 20 minutes, they were the better team, full stop. And weren't able to capitalize on that, but at least showed ways in which they might be able to. So this was a Colombia team that had 9 players out of 11 who started the World Cup quarterfinal against England. This was not a weakened, well, it was slightly weakened because Linda Caicedo, their best player, is injured. But other than that, mostly the same team, exactly the same defense, and the fans did some things to them. There's some progress to enjoy from that, particularly because it was not a massively new look 11, but it was definitely a new look squad to some extent. Most of the youngsters were on the bench and most of them didn't play. So we only got one debut out of a possible 5. But that's the environment that this tour is taking part in. So I don't know how to tie that back into the White Ferns other than saying that. Okay, no, I'll let you to it then.
Because you highlighted there, like the football Ferns identity is defense right now. And
always has been.
Right, and always has been. They were good defensively at the World Cup. But yeah, we want to see a bit more attacking flair. But their identity is defense, and defense often involves a lot of physicality and imposing yourself physically on the opposition, whether it's CJ Bott, whether it's Mackenzie Barry. and whoever else you want to name, they love to tackle. They play football as if they are Kiwis who love to rip in and be physical. The White Ferns don't have any physical advantage. Not like, obviously it's a different type of sport, but whether it's hitting, smashing sixes, well, one player had a strike rate over 100 against Pakistan, and that was Matty Green. But also, they don't impose themselves on the opposition as they had done before. In the changing nature of women's sport, other teams like Pakistan, they can be more physical, they are more powerful, they are faster now, and it's not just a case of, oh, you guys are bigger, faster, and stronger, you're going to win. No, this White Ferns team does lack that kind of dominant bully physicality that they had previously, and it's evident in Pakistan's seamers being more effective than the White Ferns seamers. It's evident in a lack of confidence hitting the ball. It's evident in the fielding performance. Like, the White Ferns do not have the same identity as the Football Ferns. And that is it's a pretty sneaky issue at the moment, because I think it comes from the lack of confidence of these players not dominating at the domestic level. Whereas the Football Ferns players right now, they are confident. They're confident because they are playing in the best leagues in the world. They're playing professional football over and over again, week after week. They're making tackles every single week. They're making passes. They're interrupting the play. Everything you talked about, they do in a professional setting every single week. Brewing confidence, take it to the Football Ferns. You're doing the same stuff because you know you can do it. The White Ferns do not have that confidence, and I think that is a factor in their lack of physical bullying, imposing that on the opposition. Can you give us a hot couple of minutes about the Wellington Phoenix's win over Western United? Fantastic away performance. Where are they on the ladder? Must be top of the table by now. Top of the table.
Numero uno.
Wellington Phoenix, best football team in Australasia or Oceania, Australia and New Zealand in the A-League. What are some key hitters about this win for the Wellington Phoenix? And Western United, they're still last, so shout out to them.
Yeah, shout out to them. I do want to say just on the Football Ferns, though, it's not like they're doing everything right, because we know quite clearly that they're still a team trying to fix things. But what we've seen is games in which they have that defensive gritty identity and games in which they don't have it. And the games in which they do are a lot better. So that's the lesson to be learned. It's there for the taking, you know? And it is the strength of a lot of our players is being able to do that kind of stuff. You want to play to your strengths. White Ferns not really playing to their strengths. Wellington Phoenix, men and women, they're playing to their strengths right now. And I don't know. I love watching both of these teams play at the moment. We're not really talking about the women's team because they had a week off. We might talk about some of the Chloe Knott stuff on Thursday. I don't know. I did write about it on in the email, which is sort of all I had to say on that. But on the field, they're doing very good things, playing really well. And the Blokes are a funky team to watch because they're top of the A-League and they still feel like a little bit of an average attacking team. But then they've this season in ways that they didn't last year. They've just found ways. And I guess the difference really is sort of is their attack is better because their defense is better. It's a similar theme. It's like I think they're that much better at keeping the ball out of their own net that it only takes one flashy moment or one marginal onside offside call, which is what they had against Western United, to turn an otherwise kind of obvious 0-0 draw into suddenly it's a 1-0 win. It's like, were you at your best? No. Were you struggling at times during that game? Perhaps the Western United had more of the chances, though I do think that perhaps the Phoenix had the better of the chances, where like United had a lot of Western had a lot of shots from outside the area and things that were maybe straight at Paulson. He made a couple of very good saves, but also a lot of more routine ones that and there were block shots which aren't on target and things like this, where the Phoenix did a lot of defending. I don't know how much they were out of their comfort zone with that defending in the ways that they were against Melbourne Victory in the first half hour of that game last time they were away. So I think some of that was like, yes, you're facing up a lot of shots, but also you've kind of got the opposition shooting from the areas where you know you can protect yourself from that. So it's not too bad. Whereas the Knicks had some big chances. It's still the case that Costa Barbarouses and David Ball just don't want to shoot. Even when they're forced to shoot, they sort of do so reluctantly. But Costa now, I think, has 3 assists already this season. So he hasn't got a goal, but he's got 3 assists. David Ball got an assist last week and setting up the winner. Costa set up the winner this week. Like, if Costa had played that ball first time, by the way, there's no question of offside. The pass would have been exactly the same, and Ben Old still would have run onto it and scored it, but he took a touch and almost forced Oldie into an offside position. I was sure that was offside, actually, watching it live, and even looking at the replay, I'm not looking at the lines drawn on the field. I'm not entirely convinced, but I'll take their word for it, and I'll take the 3 points for sure. But they're just, again, they're an efficient team right now, and they're conceding a lot fewer goals than they should be, based on their XGs and stuff. I actually think I want to write about them this week, and I'm thinking maybe the XG angle is the one to look at, just because it was such a thing last year where they were so bad against the XG sort of guidelines. This season they're so good against them. But yeah, they've got a really high functioning defensive unit at the moment, and that defensive unit involves Tim Payne, international veteran, sure, at right back, sweet as. Scott Wooden, as what do you call him, import centre back. That's exactly the level you want from your import centre back. Although, wasn't the level he played at last year. He's considerably better this time around. But also, it involves A-League rookie Lucas Kelly-Hill, 18 years old at left back, and the guy who I think maybe might have, like, obviously Alex Paulson gets the hype, but as far as that back four goes, there's a case to say Finn Sermon's actually been the highest performing dude of all of them. I think he's been fantastic, where he hasn't made a mistake this season. He just wins all his headers. His passing has got so much better. He's always looked like a player who had like the perfect stature for a center back, perfect mentality for a center back, but coming through the grades, a few mistakes in there. And those are sort of the kind of things that get ironed out with experience. He hasn't even got that much experience, and he's ironing that stuff out now. So I think that he's absolutely in the same category as Alex Paulson, as someone who is like, this is one of the rare players coming through, which is the strategy that they're trying to get to. But this is one of the rare there's only a few guys who actually will get to this point. One of the rare dudes coming through who you look at and think, they could sell them to a European club and make some money. Like, most guys are just going to leave at the end of their contract. Some guys just aren't going to command fees from anyone. They're good, but not that good. A very small handful, Libby Kikache, Sarpreet Singh, Ben Wayne, are going to be good enough to actually get someone being like, oh, we're not going to wait till their contract runs down. We want them now. This is a player, and we're keen. Finn Sermon and Alex Paulson are the guys right now who are in that category. And yeah, Sermon's been brilliant this season, man. He's just doing all those good centre back things without having to be showy, because you don't have to be showy when everything is just running like a well-oiled machine, which is what their defense is doing, and that's allowing them to be a team who can counterattack, and a team who don't need to be scoring 3 goals in a game to win. 1 goal will do. 2 back-to-back 1-0 wins, and they're top of the table. That's how you do it.
Boom. Shout out to Wellington Phoenix doing their best Aotearoa Warriors impersonation for 2023 as the most fun Aotearoa sports teams. Big up yourself. We'll be back on Thursday with another episode of the Niche Cast, and of course Wednesday for the Subscriber podcast. Make yourself heard, make yourself known. Big up. Love yourself, kia kaha. Stay beautiful. Churcher.